James, I don't know if you saw the game. It wasn't pretty, but I think that's symptomatic of a Premier League playoff final. I mean, it's one of those games where there's too much to lose now, and I think it almost has a negative effect on the football itself. But will Huddersfield be a welcome addition to the Premier League?
If I'm honest, I think they might struggle. I think it's brilliant to see such a small side, a small town, rewarded for what has been an absolutely brilliant season for them. They've come a real long way from where they were last season, but I think they're going to struggle to attract the kind of Premier League level player that you need to bring in your first season in the Premier League. I mean, we've always said it for teams who come up from the Championship, that in that first summer they really need to sign players who have got a bit of Premier League experience, because playing the side that they're playing right now, I can't really see them causing teams too much hassle. Having said that, yeah, I did watch the game. It wasn't really a classic. I've seen some playoff finals that have been a hell of a lot more exciting than that, but I think I saw the point proving that, you know, when this game is worth around between 180 and 200 million pounds, you can kind of see why these players are too nervous to lose. They're too nervous to play a risky ball, to try something a bit out of the ordinary, because, you know, if it goes tits up and you end up losing your team, your city, even 200 million pounds, that's an awful lot. So yeah, the penalty shootout wasn't the best either. I think it was a pretty unfair way to finish it, but, you know, everyone has their own opinions on how that goes. And but yeah, I think Huddersfield will struggle a little bit in the Premier League. Obviously, fingers crossed for them and their fans that they'll be able to hack it in the top flight. But I think it really does rely on them getting a bit of financial backing and using that money that they've been given now to bring in some Premier League quality players. Otherwise, I think they're definitely gonna struggle next season.
Yeah, I mean, this is no disrespect to Huddersfield, but I don't know. You looked at that team, you just thought, where's the quality going to be for next season? Rob, does David Wagner almost have to now start again? He's done miracles already in the Championship with such a small budget and exceeding expectations massively, but does he almost have to sort of look at that squad and think, right, I'm almost going to need like 11 new faces, really? Because if you compare it to the likes of Newcastle and Brighton, Newcastle certainly have got a smattering of Premiership quality. Brighton perhaps not as much, but certainly better than Huddersfield. I mean, the job really does start now for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you look around the side, and there's a fair few loan players in there as well, which potentially, I mean, they probably could sign people like Izzy Brown and Casey Palmer. I think are both on loan, and Aaron Moy as well as from Man City. They might be able to get back now with the money, but looking at their team, it's very much, and no disrespect, but it's very much like very average Championship players and a scattering of loan signings. You know, there's not the greatest of quality in there, to be honest. I think it possibly showed in yesterday's game. Kachunga's quite good, saying that, but he does almost strike me as someone that, come about November, is probably going to be trying to angle for a move or something. Just the way he went off yesterday, he seemed to be a bit mopey. I almost compared him to Alexis Sanchez, but with half the quality. They really need to do some transfer business, I think, because they do look like a team that is just going to struggle and come straight back down. And I mean, better sides than them have gone straight back down, and I really do worry for them a little bit. Exciting to see them up. You know, they're a historic club. They're club that they were the first team to do 3 league titles in a row, I think, of the 1920s. So, I mean, it's quite something. So it is nice to see them back in the top 5, but I do worry that it's not probably going to last very long.
Yeah, you're certainly right in the sense that it's always great to see a new club coming to the Premier League. That the novelty of them going to, you know, the big grounds, the Old Traffords, the Emirates, etc. for the first sort of few weeks is certainly interesting. I think in terms of the players, I think it's more a case of a system than the actual sort of quality itself. So Wagner's been sort of buying players to fit what he thinks is a system that works, and it certainly has worked this season. In terms of someone like Aaron Moy, whether he can cut it in the Premier League, I don't know. It didn't really impress me on Monday. Maybe that's due to nerves, but I know he's sort of highly rated and such, but whether he can sort of make that step up, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't see him returning back to the City squad, for example, especially with their ins and outs and what they're sort of planning over the summer. The overhaul is certainly starting, We've got Bernardo Silva in last week. We're looking set for Ederson at 43 million for a goalkeeper. So that's going to be the world record for a goalkeeper broken. And most probably Kyle Walker. So James, we're looking at least spending about 100 million already, with more to come. It's very early to say, but they mean business. Would you perhaps make them one of the only favourites for next season? I
think you have to, considering how much money they've spent and are probably going to spend, and I think it probably piles on the pressure a little bit more. If you think about how expensive Man City's squad is already, it's probably worth in excess of 300 million, and then another. I think it's been Guardiola's been pledged another 200 million for transfers this year. I think you'd be very frustrated as a Man City owner if you turn around and there wasn't another Premier League trophy sat in your cabinet in the next 2 or 3 years. I think you could also argue maybe that these players are going to need a chance to bed in England, and that will probably be their scapegoat at the end of the season if they don't win. Players like Bernardo Silva, who have definitely cut it in League One, and they've definitely cut it in the Champions League too. But England is a very different style of football. We've seen that with so many players who haven't cut it over the years in England. But with such a vast amount of money being spent and such a high quality player being brought in, and not just high quality, but also the players in positions that they really need to improve on. Man City need easily probably 3 new fullbacks, if not 4, maybe definitely another centre half, and then I suppose they can always improve on different parts of the field too for their bench, which they certainly will. But they've definitely got to sort out the defence and the goalkeeper, and if they are willing to spend big and put together a formidable back line, then I think they definitely are going to be a force to be reckoned with next season, because they've already got a strong foundation. They've got a lot of good, young, exciting players that are already firing on all cylinders. Last season, the likes of Leroy Sané and Gabriel Jesus have been absolutely brilliant towards the end of the season. And adding to that is only going to make them even more terrifying. Whether you agree with it or not, the amount of money that's in the game and the amount of money that's in Manchester City Football Club, you can't write them off. You cannot deny that they're definitely going to be one of the favourites for the Premier League next season.
Rob, the overhaul is certainly starting this summer. As James touched, they're probably going to need 4 centre-backs with what they're shedding. But is this now a case that Guardiola is getting to the point where it's now his squad and the excuses are starting to sort of run out now? He can't really rest on, it's not my squad, I've not had a chance to spend money. Is this make or break this season, or will he still be afforded time thereafter if they don't deliver the Premier League come next May?
I think there's going to have to be some pretty big extenuating circumstances if they don't win the Premier League this season coming up. I think I've said it before, you do wonder if, because they coveted Guardiola for so long, whether he gets afforded a bit more time than say Mancini and Pellegrini did. But the next new toy will probably be on the market. The next new coach that's doing wonders in European football will probably be on the market by next summer. And if that's the case, Guardiola hasn't delivered. If he doesn't win the Champions League or he doesn't win the Premier League, he could be out, and this could be more memes of Fraudiola and people saying he could never cut it in England. But I think the amount of money they're spending so early in the window as well. I mean, it literally opened and within seconds, 50, 60 million was thrown at Bernardo Silva. I feel sorry for Monaco in a sense, because it looks as if that team is going to be absolutely broken up by the end of this summer, because Benjamin Mendy, from the sound of it, is going to City as well. But yeah, I mean, this looks like Guardiola is forming what he believes will be his team to win the title, and good luck to him, because if he doesn't win it, he's going to have to answer quite a lot from the owners, who will be wondering why on earth he spent so much money. I mean, I don't think even Mourinho last summer, I don't think we'll have spent as much money as Guardiola looks like City are going to spend this year. And there really isn't an excuse for not winning something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, certainly with Monaco also, if we touch on them very quickly, but it comes as no surprise that the vultures are circling around their squads. And I mean, even if you're the Monaco owner, if you look at someone like Kylian Mbappe, for example, we're looking at prices of 100 million, it's probably best to cash in now. Not, for his development perhaps it's probably better to stay at Monaco for a season, but if you're the Monaco owner and someone's waving £100 million in your face, Mbappe's only one game away from getting a serious injury and that value getting wiped out. So you might as well cash in at his most hyped and try and sort of regenerate the squad as much as you can this summer. I know they've brought in Yuri Tillemans as a likely replacement for Bernardo Silva, but it was always going to be a case really that the team and the way they played during this season has been incredible. So it's just the way it goes that the top tier of clubs will always sort of look down as and when they can. But just touching on Guardiola still, James, is there a danger perhaps that he could go for that burnout again that he has at Barcelona, has at Bayern Munich, that we might only see 3 years of him at City because he just again can't sort of handle the pressure of a long-term job in such a long frame of time? Because he has touched on sort of comments that this is going to be my last job, I'm not going to be here for a long time, etc. So is he sort of trying to get the early excuses and put in the bedding for don't expect me to be around too long?
I think you could say that, but I think there's also going to be an awful lot of fingers pointed at Guardiola if he doesn't produce this year, because if you look at his track record, he's at Barcelona. He inherited a team that was already a team of champions. It was a team that it picked itself. The first 11 was always probably going to win the Champions League and the Liga. Then he went to Bayern Munich, and it's very much the same situation there. That team picked itself. It's a team who are always going to walk the Bundesliga. They're going to win by 10 points. It comes to Man City, and it's a lot more of a challenge. There's a lot more competitive teams in England, even if Man City are going to spend so much money. And then when he does come, he's inherited a multi-million-pound team. This team's by far the most expensive in England at the time. And then he's been given another £200 million to add on top of that to go and buy Europe's best talent. And so imagine the absolute uproar if he doesn't produce next season, if these players don't play well together, if they flop. And even if they don't win the Premier League, because if you think this team is worth so much money that it really, really should be at least competing at the top. And Man City didn't really compete as much as they should have this season. And if they don't next season, there's going to be serious fingers pointed at Guardiola. Are you the manager that we actually think you are? Are you the coach that everyone goes on about? Are you the footballing genius that players supposedly come to play for? So I think he could be maybe feeling the pressure a little bit, and to be honest, with that much money flying around, so you should.
I think one thing we forget is that we all talk about City capturing the Premier League. I think their owner's going to run out of patience soon because they want a Champions League title, don't they? They're not quite viewed in Europe's elite just yet. They're not going to be until they really compete on the European stage. I know they got to the semi-final last season, but they were quite meek in their performances against Real Madrid. They never really turned up. So I think there's obviously the element of returning to Premier League heights, but I don't think they've hired Guardiola with a Champions League trophy in mind, and if that doesn't get delivered either, I think questions will also have to be asked there also. In terms of the Champions League final, we'll come to that last. I just want to fit in a couple more transfer rumours or transfer deals. One, Rob, I'll start with you, is Riyad Mahrez, who has announced a desire to leave. He's saying that he had chats with the owners last season saying that I'll stay for one more year, because I want to try Champions League football and help you with that transition into Europe's top competition. But now there's no European football to follow up this season or next season. Will Leicester sort of honour their word and let him leave, or are we going to be witnessing an acrimonious transfer split this summer?
I imagine he'll probably go. I don't know how many clubs will be clamouring for him like they perhaps were last summer. I know Arsenal are linked again, but I do wonder how badly we're going to have him. I mean, if Alexis Sanchez moves, it might be that he is the replacement, but he's certainly going to step down from Alexis Sanchez. To be fair, it wouldn't surprise me someone like a Monaco coming in for him. If they lose someone like Thomas Lemar, that's definitely a position more. I think it's the opposite side, but certainly a position Mahrez could fill out there as a wide playmaker. But I think he'll go. I don't think Leicester have got certainly haven't got the Champions League football. They certainly don't look as if they've got the league title ambition to say, hey, look, stay for another year. We might get another league title. That it's gone now. That miracle's long gone. I think it's probably the right time to cash in on him as best you can. I mean, it's someone you could still probably get upwards of 25-30 million for.
Yeah, you're right. I think his stock's obviously not as high as last season, but it's sort of they can still get a solid price for him. I think there's still going to be people certainly interested. Perhaps if he stays another season, that might not be the same case. So I think there's an element of cash in while you still can and get a decent profit. Of course, they only paid about 400,000, so whatever they make is going to be a tidy sum. But I think it's probably the sort of natural end to his career at Leicester. Someone whose career at Chelsea has come to an end today is Asmir Begovic, James. He's moved to Bournemouth. Surely that's a good move for both parties? Yeah,
definitely. I think Bournemouth certainly needed someone in that position. I don't think Boric was quite up to the task of it. And Begovic, we know, is a top-class proven Premier League goal scorer. Hopefully not a goal scorer, goalkeeper. Yeah, I think the only thing that could get Eddie Howe in a bit of trouble could be the transfer fee, and having spent quite a lot of money last season and on players that didn't really cut it. You know, Jordan Ibe was probably one of the worst signings of the season. I think a £10 million fee for Asmir Begovic. Personally, I think it's quite a good price, but Bournemouth, that they're not that financially well cut. They you think could it have been spent elsewhere? But no, it's looking like a very good signing, and I think both teams have done quite well there in terms of dealings and getting it done nice and early as well.
I'll allow that goal scorer comment because he did actually score for Stoke, didn't he? Remember that long range sort of goal kick that swirled around at Stadium?
That's exactly why I said it, don't worry.
There you go, seasoned professional. But you're right, I think in terms of Bournemouth, if you did look at their team, one criticism, they were quite leaky at the back, and I think Boric was responsible. He always had the odd clanger in him, so I think it's a wise move for Bournemouth. For Begovic also, 29, the peak years of his goalkeeping career are sort of either here or certainly soon round the corner. And if you're only playing 17 games, or was it 19 games in the last 2 seasons, it's not enough for a keeper of his calibre. It's all very well being a part of a big club, but at that age you're itching to play, so I think it's certainly a move that suits both parties. That wraps up the transfer chat. So we've only got one place left to go for this season, and that's the Champions League final. For me, it's the 2 best teams in Europe as of right now, Real Madrid and Juventus. Rob, who is going to take the European Cup, as it used to be known, on Saturday? Is it going to be Real Madrid or Juventus for you?
You know what? My gut feeling says Juventus. I think it depends really on which Cristiano Ronaldo turns up. If it was the Cristiano Ronaldo that's played in the last couple of finals for Real, Juventus certainly have a chance. If it's the Cristiano Ronaldo that's banging in hat-tricks against everyone in the Champions League, then they are really in trouble. But Juve, I think as a complete team, are much better than Real. They have the back three of BBC, which seems unstoppable this season. Kept out Barcelona and nearly kept out Monaco as well, who was scoring for fun. I think they might have too much for Real, even though Ronaldo, Benzema, Morata, Isco, Bale, whoever they play, are pretty dangerous. But even at the other end of the field, I mean, Dybala's had a great season again. Higuain, I'm sure, would love to have a say against his former club as well. So I think Juve might just edge it on Saturday, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're leading 1-0 for 85 minutes. Ramos steps up with a 94th minute header to equalise it, and we end up at penalties. James,
no team in the modern era of this competition has won successive Champions League. Is that something Real Madrid can do for the first time on Saturday?
I think I have to agree with Rob. I think Juventus have just got such an all-round setup. I think they might just edge it. And Real Madrid, don't get me wrong, absolutely brilliant club, brilliant side, and that they certainly deserve to be in the Champions League final this year because of how good they've been in the Champions League. However, I think that reliance maybe on Ronaldo and Isco, certainly in the last few games, he's been one of their star players towards the end of the season. I think that reliance might just mean that they get outplayed because Juventus are so good defensively and tactically that they'll be working on how to deal with that threat. And really, when you've got players like Juventus have defensively, it's probably not the hardest threat to counteract, man marking 1 or 2 players. And then, as Rob said, you're right in saying that it's easy to forget that Juventus have got one of the most deadly strikers in the world in Higuain, and probably one of the best young players in the world in Dybala as well. And so it's really, I think it's a hard one to predict. Because you're right in saying that you don't know which Real Madrid and which Cristiano Ronaldo certainly is going to turn up. But I think hopefully that we can look forward to a good game, and rather than just a cagey affair like the Championship playoff final. Hopefully both teams go for it all guns blazing. I can actually see it being just like that, actually being a bit of an edgy one, bit of a cagey affair, especially with Juventus maybe relying on their defence a little bit more than Madrid. But yeah, I think Juventus are just going to edge it.
Rob, there's still question marks over whether Gareth Bale is fully fit. Do you take the gamble if he is available, or is that going to be sort of harsh to someone like Isco, who's sort of got them towards to Cardiff? I mean, do you sort of roll the dice with Bale, or do you sort of give him a subs role if he was in Zidane?
I'd start Isco all day long.
I'd agree, yeah.
I mean, Bale will be itching to get on because, of course, he wants to win it in Cardiff. And he has, I mean, that 2014 final, even though it was against the Tyrone Atletico in extra time, he was so vital in winning it 3 years ago. But even so, I think I would certainly start with Isco. And then if you need that impact substitute, there is a guy on the bench who's itching to get on and make an impact in his home country. And there you are. I mean, I think I'd have Bale there as an impact sub.
James, would you say that perhaps Juventus have the better first 11, but Real Madrid have the better squad?
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that look at the squads, because look at the bench that Real Madrid are going to have to call on. It's either going to be one of either Isco or Bale who's going to start, and then there's just so many players that they can look at to bring on to change the game. I think someone that goes unnoticed is Marco Asensio. He's probably one of the best young players in the world, and he's the kind of bloke that would probably stroll into any team in the world right now, apart from Real Madrid, because of the stars they've got. It's easy to say that, but then you can't write Juventus off too soon either, because they've got some great players on the bench too. I'm sure that they're preparing for Real Madrid as vigorously as anyone. So yeah, I just hope that it's a good final. I hope that it's a classic rather than a bit of a boring one.
Well, Juventus have done 2 legs of the treble. They've sort of coasted towards the end of the Serie A season, so they're going to be well refreshed. Should Real Madrid, whose season finished last week, but should Real Madrid win, Rob, that's going to be a 4th Spanish team in a row. So that sort of strengthens Spain's dominance in Europe's top competition. Does it make a case for the argument that a Premier League team almost needs 2 kinds of teams to compete in England and in Europe? Because, for example, if you're Real Madrid, and it's not about the sort of strength of the league, but you've got like Alaves or Sporting Gijon away one week, whereas the Premier League is the cut and thrust every week. There's no off week, so there's no sort of real chance to rest and rotate players. Is that now becoming the detriment to English teams when they really want to compete in Europe?
It's a fair point, because I think when we were at our strongest, it was where there was that big gulf between the top 4 and then everyone else in the league. But I mean, when you look at the table this year, there's been that massive gulf between the top 6 or possibly top 6 or 7 and the rest of the league. There is such a points drop off between, I think, 7th and 8th. It's quite alarming. So although the physicality and the pace of the games, it's never really going to be as slow as some of the Spanish games or ponderous, there almost is becoming that gulf in quality that there is in Spain and some of the other leagues. But I mean, from an excitement point of view, I really don't want that to happen. I like the Champions League. I always watch the Champions League. It's nice to see all these top European clubs, and of course I would always want Arsenal to win the Champions League. But when it comes to it, I am much more interested in what happens in my own domestic league rather than what happens on European nights, to be quite honest with you.
James, what's your take on that? I mean, would you, obviously you want to win the Champions League as a Spurs fan, but would you prefer the sort of cut and thrust each week of the Premier League? And how do Tottenham compete next season in the Champions League as well? I mean, where do they sort of go from the lessons they've learnt from this season, and how do they sort of try and compete on 2 fronts?
I think I wouldn't change the Premier League for anything in the world. I think it's the most competitive league in the world. It's the most passionate league in the world, and I think nowhere else in the world gets football like we get in terms of just how much it means and how actually enjoyable it is. You see in places like Scotland and Italy, even France sometimes, where it's just either a 1 or 2 horse race, and it really isn't as enjoyable as the Premier League. The Premier League, you've got only in the Premier League would you have the race for 6th place. That's not a big thing anywhere else in the country, anywhere else in the world. Sorry. But in the Premier League, that is a big thing. You know, you've got the race for first, the race for fourth, the race for sixth, the race for top half, the race to stay in the Premier League. And for that reason, I just think it is the best in the world. In terms of Tottenham, I think they certainly need to make some signings, because the biggest problem that we had this season was the gulf in class between our first team and our rotation players. Because we might be able to put our first team out in the Premier League on a Saturday or Sunday, but then midweek we're really struggling when the rotation players that we can call on are the likes of Moussa Sissoko, you know. So if we can kind of clear those kind of players out and bring in some higher quality players, and you know, we've touched on it before, that's why it's so difficult, is because these players are coming to Tottenham knowing that they might not necessarily be in the first team, and first team football is what every player wants at the end of the day. And so, you know, being on the bench on a weekend and then playing an hour in midweek isn't exactly what these players want to do, and so that might make it difficult to sign top quality players. But it really is what Spurs need to do to be able to compete, as you say, on two fronts, because, you know, there were games last season where the Champions League especially, where our fringe players and our rotation players, they really just weren't cutting it against Europe's elite, and we saw that against teams like Monaco and Bayer Leverkusen, where we just got torn apart really, and it wasn't good enough.
Right, that just leaves me for a prediction from both of you then. Rob, how do you see Saturday panning out?
I'm going to go 2-1 to Juve.
Oh, bold. And you, James?
I'm going to go for a cagey 1-0 Juve.
Now, me personally, I want Juve to win, but I've just got a feeling that Real Madrid are going to nick it again, and I reckon it's going to be something like 2-1 after extra time. But so that's my head over my heart, because I'd quite like to see Juventus win it after their disappointment of 2 years ago. I think they've been certainly one of the best teams in Europe, and it'd be nice to see Spain's dominance come to an end. Talking of coming to an end, that's the end of our podcast for this season. So it just leaves me to thank everyone who's been on the show as a guest this season. Thanks to everyone. It's been absolutely great. James, it's been absolutely great having you on most weeks. I hope you come back next season.
Yeah, don't worry, mate. I'll be here next season.
Excellent. We'll talk with your agent over the summer about some improved terms. And Rob, solid third cap. I think you're a regular now, so we'll certainly have you back if you want to come on next season.
Oh yeah, I'll be back. I'll be around.
Don't sound too excited, Rob. We're not forcing you.
It's all right. I'll get my agent to discuss terms here.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Are we like a Champions League podcast? This is the problem, you know. If we finish fifth in the podcasting charts, I might have to look around more of these European podcasts.
Don't know your colours to the mast just yet. See how something comes out. Right then, that's it. Like I say, thanks for this season. I've had a great amount of fun hosting it. I hope you've had a great amount of fun listening to it. So it just leaves me to say, my name's Dan Tracy. This is the eFootball Podcast. Until next season, good night.